Hello, ladies and gents. Romie Reviews here. I, of course, watched the chilling adventures of Sabrina and the Netflix show. Great. I loved it. I want to talk about 10 things that I really loved about the show. So I'm only going to spend maybe like 10, 11 minutes on this. So let's jump into it. The first thing that I loved was I loved how it was shot. So I should say more so production values and cues. I loved the fact that if you notice throughout every episode, the entire season, I said, something's wrong with my eyes. Something's wrong with my eyes. And then I realized, no, part of the scenes were most of the time out of focus, kind of like what my camera just did, out of focus. And the cool thing, and yes, I said the cool thing with that. The cool thing was that is it made you really pay attention to what they wanted us to pay attention to. Doing something like that allowed us to say, oh, well, look at that object, or oh, look at the colors in the scene, or oh, or look at the person's reaction on their face. And it was cool, especially they did that all the time when they were, talking to two characters from a certain distance or certain viewpoint. So I loved that. I loved the house that they were in, the school, especially the witch school, the forest. Again, I like that it looked real. And I liked the fact that anything that was supposed to look magical did. But it wasn't in a generic looking way to me, because it still had real elements, real colors, real lighting. So production. Second thing that I liked was their play on social issues and social topics. So whether it was sexuality, where we had Susie, where it's like, well, is Susie a lesbian? Does she really think that she's a male? Like, we didn't get that answer, but it brought up the question, and they put it right there in our face. It wasn't just like, oh, well, maybe, but no one talks about that. No, it was a big topic. Ambrose. Now, even though he's a supernatural being and there is a certain level of sexual fluidity, if you've watched other shows, supernatural beings, he ended up being more so, I guess technically you can call most of them bisexual, but he definitely was more so gay or homosexual than, let's say, Hilda or Zelda, who definitely were trying to get them a man. Oh, those two were a mess. But yeah, I loved that. Of course, they talked about feminism and just women's rights and, oppression, whether it's knowledge through books, censorship. It talks about all those things. So that's my second one. The third thing is the adaptations of these characters. I did not read the comics, so I don't know if in the comics they went this route and it's just brought to life as far as it being darker than the Sabrina the Teenage Witch that I grew up on, or even like the cartoon versions that I would actually see. But I loved that the characters felt real. The characters were real, but the characters felt real. It didn't feel like, okay, they're a witch, they're a warlock, and they just happen to exhibit, some type of humanistic characteristic. Or it never felt generic to me. I think that's what I'm trying to say with the characters. They went deep. Everyone had their own issues, and they didn't run away from it. Like even with Rosalind and her thing with, she's not sure she fully believes in God. And it's interesting because her father, I think he's like the pastor of a church or something like that. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So I love the real characters, or at least the real touches to the characters, how they moved. They felt like I was watching teenagers going through teenage angst and identity crisis. but also still having to take charge. And so it felt realistic to me. The fourth thing that I liked was the way how they showed us the supernatural stuff. So that does kind of go along with my first one with production, but going along with the supernatural magic side, I like the fact that, like I said, for the most part, it didn't feel generic. It didn't feel forced. When the not snake demon, but almost snake worm demon spewed the acid, it looked real to me. With the other demons that they had in there, they looked realistic. I said, oh, ugh. And that's always good. It wasn't come on now, you can do better than that. When Ambrose was being carved up in the dream, and he carved up in the dream world, and his guts were out. I said, oh wow. And the heat coming from it. Why am I focusing on that? So all of the magic stuff and the spells, I understand they were using more so like, I guess, real spells from spell books that can be found that were passed down. So I said, okay, this is cool. This is cool. Another thing is I loved the progression of each episode. Each episode made me feel like, wow. I kept calling it a movie. Because it didn't feel like, okay, in this episode, three things happened, and it just felt like it dragged. No, in each episode for me, it felt like, oh no, it's almost done. Oh, there's 10 more minutes. Oh no, it's almost done. Oh, there's still 15 more minutes. Oh no. So it felt full. It didn't feel rushed. It went at a good pace for first season. For season 2, of course, I'm expecting different things. Speaking of pacing and development, let's say Sabrina. I liked this adaptation of Sabrina. I liked the fact that we see she started off as she was 15 when the show first started, and we see how naive she was. And she was still naive even after she turned 16. But things really started to go downhill, and I love that she never gave up. But I also liked that she wasn't a pushover. I think that's my favorite thing about her. She wasn't a pushover. She questioned everything. She was curious about everything, but she was also entitled. She was also entitled and spoiled, and it made for what happened at the end of this first season, where she got tricked and duped. And
remember to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe, and come back
to accepting her full powers and becoming a minion of the fallen angel. So Sabrina, I thought that her character was well-rounded for her age, but the how naive she was really came out when it came to being manipulated and her not listening to people. But she's 16. Speaking of characters, I also liked, and this is a twofer, Prudence. And so Prudence, Sabrina, and Ambrose were my favorites. They were my favorites. I love that Prudence, even though she was a little misguided, at least she did believe in something and something bigger than her, and her beliefs for that never wavered. What did happen was she's not dumb, and she's not just ignorant and gullible and just goes along to fully get along. She also, when Sabrina questioned things enough, it caused Prudence to think, I'll check and see, just to make sure. And I can appreciate that from Prudence, but I mean, her energy, first of all, Prudence looks good. Secondly, she just commanded. She came in and was like, okay, it's a Prudence show. And I had the same reaction when Ambrose first saw her, like, oh. Once you heard her name, you realize, oh, this is the girl that Sabrina has the issue with, but she looks good. Look at her. Come on. And Ambrose, I thought it was interesting seeing him as a guy who, he was housebound. He couldn't leave the house because he tried to blow up the Vatican. We find out later his teacher was, a radical. And so I think the bigger issue was that he did without the permission of the coven than it just being the Vatican, and also exposing them to the outside world. But we see how he really would do anything for Sabrina, but he even realized he was enabling to her too much. It also helped that he eventually, got a boyfriend. And I thought it was interesting how with Prudence and Ambrose, they showed that at the end of the day, they are witches. They are supernatural beings. Their sexuality is a little bit more fluid. Do they have preferences, or realistically what they really like? Yes, absolutely. But the fluidity is still there. So we'll see if that also impacts Sabrina in season 3. In season 2, I'm already calling it for season 3. For season 2, Sabrina's friends. So Harvey, her boyfriend, who we find out is his family is actually tied to witch hunters. That's something that it's going to be big in season 2, how that's going to pan out. Him losing his brother, him from not hurting a fly to having to shoot and kill his brother, him dealing with his father, who's a kook. Susie, who has I don't know if she really has the identity issue, or if her issue is she doesn't feel like she can really express it yet and openly. I don't know if Susie is lesbian. I don't know if Susie is going to end up being transgender. All I know is that Susie is Susie, and we love her for it. Rosalind. She's a complicated one, because in season 1, we see that she goes from being this, really passionate, high-strung friend who slowly going blind, and we learn that she's actually developing powers. And her grandmother dies at the end of the season, and I feel like her powers are just gonna only get stronger. So is it going to be her and Sabrina, taking on the world? Or what's going to happen there? Her, Susie, and Sabrina taking on the world? I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but I'm excited to see that development with them, her friends. How close is she going to be with her friends? Sabrina's going to be with her friends in season 2, because it looks like after her accepting her full powers, she's going to be more so involved with the witch and warlock school versus her regular school. And let's see, was there anything else? No, I think that's it. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to talk about what do I want to see for season 2, because we left on a cliffhanger, the cliffhanger of the witch hunters. We really didn't get into the witch hunters, because we keep hearing about these witches or warlocks who are getting killed, but no one's really looking into it. So that's going to be interesting. So please like, comment, subscribe.
Remember to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe and come back.